All right, look at that. We're live. Let's see. Now let's go check out that. Let me go check out that YouTube page there, and see if it shows up. Is there a link? Let's see. Rum-da-dum-dum-dum. Yep, there it is. It says live.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
So I am. Yeah, we're live to something. All right, I'm going to put this on LinkedIn. I'm going to put this on YouTube, and then I'm going to put this on Twitter. And let's see.
Don't worry, it's just his first one. We look like fools.
Yeah. That's no big deal.
Kind of feel like I'm talking. It's like a Joe Rogan podcast. It's not. It's all just fluid.
Well, listen, I'm no Joe Rogan, mainly because I haven't taken horse dewormer yet. But you see what I did there? Oh, that's terrible. That is awful. But it's funny. So,
Might come beat you up for saying that.
Joe Rogan could kick my butt all over the place.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Here we go. That looks awesome, by the way. Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. All right. All right. Let's do the thing that we do. Ready, guys? 5, 4, 3. All right. Good morning. Good afternoon. Good evening. Welcome down to Security Rabbit Hole to yet another edition of the Down to Security Rabbit Hole podcast. This episode, affectionately titled "You Gotta Hear This." We're beating ransomware, and that's all I got for you. We're going to see if this show lives up to my own hype here. But I got a note from somebody I worked with in the past that don't let his job title fool you. He's probably one of the more technically savvy people I know. And I figured we'd get him on the podcast. We'd have the conversation. He promised me we'd be solving ransomware by the end of this. And so here we go. James, are you excited?
I was kind of. It's funny.
You seem tepid.
No, I'm thinking about this right now, and I'm like, man, I wish, since you're doing this, I wish we had a way to throw up a splash screen of this thing just got ransomwared. Like, sorry, this broadcast can't be shown unless we pay, $500,000 worth of Bitcoin or something. And then we're like,
dude, nobody's gonna ransom me for $500,000. Nobody in their right mind.
Just like perfect. Maybe you can go back through the recording and actually add that in for a second, and have one of those like emergency broadcast symbols on there, like, oh, sorry, ransomware hit us right as we were recording this, and then it's gone, right? And then we're like, just kidding, we solved it.
Okay, well, I'm going to try that in post when I get the video working and posted. But let's not leave our guest hanging too long. Longtime friend, mentor, and somebody that I got to work with in a past life, I should say, the one and only Mr. Steve Perkins.
No. Don't do that. Don't do that. Hey, good to be here. Thanks, Captain. Please don't do that. Don't do that.
Can I build you up?
Yeah, no. Well, it's an important thing, right? Because in the security industry, it's full of people with big false claims, right? And
you don't say.
I'm definitely not that big and whatever. So
he didn't show up with a logo, so he's not that big.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's no theme music here. I don't know. Is this even real? All right. So here's how this happened, guys. Steve got a hold of me and said, "Hey, we've got this idea, and we've solved ransomware." And I had the same look on my face you all do right now, which is like, okay. And then we talked through it, and what we're gonna do right now. And I think this is kind of legit. So I figured you guys had to hear this. There's, some of you guys that listen are investors. Some of you guys that listen are heads of something or other at various companies. A couple of you guys are practitioners. Most of you guys are practitioners. So this applies to everybody. And so, all right, we're gonna dive right down in. Steve, tell me about. We'll get into like who the company is and all that in a minute. But tell me about the claim you're making and what it is that you've done.
Yeah. Okay. So We are doing something that everybody thinks is not possible, and that is that we can reverse the encryption of ransomware. Right, so your files get locked up, and then you get the ugly screen that says you have been encrypted by the most powerful encryption. Don't even try. Pay me the money and get your files back. And we actually perfected a technology that can reverse that encryption. And so I'll tell you how it works in just a second. But our problem, biggest problem, is we're doing something that everybody thinks is impossible. And so I sound like noise. But it looks like everything coming out of our labs is showing 100% success rates. We're about to release the product, early preview product, hopefully by the end of the year, and start getting it out there. You could kind of think of it as we're in clinical trials, limited clinical trials right now, and we'll be releasing broad-based clinical trials. But seriously, it's a good analogy, right? I mean, we got to get it out there to have more people kick the tires. We've got a select group of partners and people today, but that's it. So your next question is going to be, how do you do it? You say, they're encrypted. How do you say you can do it or not do it?
I mean, you were saying, look, we reverse encryption is I mean, like, okay, fine. It feels like you just sort of, it's not you're upping the game on ransomware. You've just sort of called it like it's over. We've won and go home. And that is, I mean, yes, that's a fairly lofty claim, Steve.
Well, yeah. Well, so let's be very clear. There's lots of forms of ransomware. I mean, technically, if you clinically break it down, the idea of ransomware is malicious software that holds you hostage for money somehow, right? Yes. And it could be, I mean, there's scareware. There's stuff that actually isn't even a threat. They just scare people who aren't very sophisticated into paying because there's nothing really happening. They just say something's happening. There's leakware. It's called leakware. It's like they exfiltrate data and then they threaten to expose it or dox you.
Leakware, sponsored by Depends.
There's lockerware. These are names, I didn't make these up. These are names out there. And lockerware is where they rewrite your boot record or lock your system up so you just can't start it. But the big one that's actually pretty predominant out there is what's called crypto ransomware, and they lock up your files, right? They take critical data files or all your files. They've actually gotten pretty sophisticated because it takes time to encrypt all the files. Who cares if Word is encrypted? They care if all your documents are encrypted. So they're getting much more surgical about saying, I'm going to encrypto your files and your data, both locally as well as on every store and cloud drive I can find. Okay, so
that's the trick with them. That's the big trick though, is that they've figured out, like, it used to be just, we're going to encrypt all your pictures and your doc files, and then they went, well, hold on, people do backups, so then they kind of started going after backups, and then they started going into your iCloud, and then into your Dropbox and into your every place else, and it's not even, it's not even the entire file. Sometimes they encrypt every couple of bits, every couple of bytes, and then they break fundamentally everything, so it doesn't really work, and you can't really go fix it on your own.
Which also makes detection enormously hard if you're not doing whole overwrites of files and they just look like a read write into a piece of data, right? They're encrypting every 16th byte, and you're like, what the heck? It turns out, just to your point, and then we'll get back to what we do because I don't want to lose track of that. But to your point, Conti is one of the most active variants out there right now, CONTI. And if you break down and analyze the code, it has over 200 knobs in it for corrupting backups and file shares. So what's happening is that toolkits are being put in the hands of threat actors, and they're actually modifying and fuzzing the activities. Now, it doesn't matter if you're all familiar with the MITRE attack matrix, right? I mean, everybody knows kind of the Lockheed kill chain, but the drill down of all those stages, the very end is impact, and there's a handful of impacts you can do, and one of them is encrypt files, right? So we're not trying to. So let's start here. We as a company are a cryptography company. We're in the business of encryption and decryption. We don't care. We're not trying to detect malware. So how we solved this problem and how we came upon it was, we have, over the years for other applications, patented and perfected a piece of technology that can detect encryption when it's happening and intercept copies of the encryption keys. So
Okay.
let me tell you how we reverse the encryption. When they go to encrypt, I steal a copy of the encryption keys that they're using in the first place. Number 2, I put them in a safe place. Number 3, I give you a utility to apply those keys back to the files originally and skip all the downstream payoff, backup removal. You simply run a utility and decrypt the files using the original files they had. Now, there's a lot more to it you're going to start to digest, but we get the keys in the first place. So we can reverse it, aka decrypt, without paying the ransom. And we can do this for any form of ransomware.
Okay, so this something similar has been not the same, has been done before, because in the anti-malware world, the EDR space, there have been tools that would, and I'm not going to name the vendors, but they would go in and look for instances of encryption, and they would basically kill those processes before they start up. The net result of that was I was annoyed as hell, and I had to delete it because every time Dropbox started, because I encrypt Dropbox, every time it started running or one of my backups started running, it would nuke my system. Like, well, this is not helpful. So I think my follow-up question is, this sounds brilliant. Why the hell hasn't somebody thought of this before? Like, this sounds. I guess the reason is it's probably pretty darn complicated.
Well, what we do to be able to provide a transparent system service that doesn't interfere with system operation, and does this universally is hard. Okay, that's number one. See, everybody trying to do a blocking technology gets into the false positive problem, right? So to exactly what you said, and extend it beyond Dropbox. I mean, it would be Dropbox box. It would be, what if you just go to encrypt a Microsoft Excel file? Right. So all of those things now have to be whitelisted out of their blocking technology, and now you're in operational hell. We have a different approach, which is let it happen, just nullify it and reverse it. Now you don't do with our solution. We're not preaching an automated reversal. You still need to clean up the ransomware and ensure the machine is safe before you restore it. But versus restoring from backups, which can take up, Gartner says the average backup restoral time is 23 days. Up to full operation for the average enterprise. 23 minutes is a big deal, right? You're talking about whether a pipeline can ship oil, right, and gasoline. So right. I mean,
but maybe we don't have massive lines at the gas pump down here in Southeast.
Yeah. So we have, it's very interesting because the whole world, so you asked how we've done it. I can't speak for what other companies are, but I think at a macro level, the security industry is approaching this as trying to detect and block malware that does ransoming. The backup industry approaches everything as storage, right? So, and we're looking at it and saying, we as a business intercept keys. So where we come from, and you haven't asked that yet, but for the last 3 years, we've developed and been selling a technology to do this for TLS. So as TLS started evolving into TLS 1.3, the need to inspect network traffic is really high, right? I mean, how do you stop exfiltration of data and things? Well, you kind of need to look inside the encrypted packets. So we perfected a technology that can learn and extract TLS keys. And then a customer came to us and said, well, couldn't you just do this for SMB, file sharing traffic? We said, yeah, why? And they said, because ransomware is running rampant. We went back, had a beer, said, why don't we just get the ransomware keys? and because that's what we do. We know how to detect encryption processes in memory, not code. We're not looking for programs. We literally, when a program loads, we scan it, we detect encryption code. There's only a handful of ways you can execute encryption. We understand those patterns. We can detect those patterns in operating code in memory, and then we can actually surgically trace and intercept copies of their operation. As a read-only process, they don't see us because we're not interfering with their execution.
Yeah, that's the things. It's a read-only. It's a watcher process.
Yeah.
That's super interesting.
How does that block, though, like not interfering with stuff you're actually trying to encrypt? Like if you've actually got programs that are trying to encrypt, are you getting some sort of alert?
So,
like, hey, this process is trying to do this. Do you want to allow? Like, are you doing this or not doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so let me complete the picture of the solution to help answer that. So we get keys. Let's just assume I've got a piece of technology can detect encryption processes and get the keys out. The base product then ships the standard setup, ships those to a cloud database. A write once, write only table in your Amazon or Azure or Google Cloud in your subscription, and simply receives keys. Okay, so let's play that out. First issue, we actually do some smart filtering. So 99% of all the keys that are going to be generated on your computer are going to be TLS or SMB. Number one, we discard those. By the way, I don't know if I told you what we do for a living today up until now. We understand TLS and SMB keys, so it's very easy for us to detect and filter those out. The second issue, whole disk encryption and kernel processes don't apply. Ransomware is not running there, right? So what we're doing is we're discarding known processes and then sending anomalous user process-based keys to the sky. So you're going to say, well, but wait a second, what if you said Dropbox keys? Who cares? You just have some Dropbox keys. By the way, Dropbox is only going to generate a few keys, not 10,000 keys in 1 minute, for the record. So the anomalous behavior of key generation is a pretty high fidelity indicator of compromise, okay? But the end of the day is I just have encryption keys for things that were never supposed to be encrypted. I also have things, maybe a few keys that might have been for things that were encrypted. If you don't have an event on your PC or on your endpoint, they're useless. They don't matter. So grabbing them has no tax per se, if you will. Then you're going to say, well, what about the privacy of that? Well, if you are an enterprise and you control the desktop, you have the right to decrypt the file. If you're not an enterprise and you don't control the desktop, you're going to have to ask permission to decrypt the file. So there's no privacy or security risk of having a remnant key. A key is nothing but a nonce, which is a random number for that, a very unique long random number for the encryption event and the key. It's just a piece. It's a blob of text that has no context, no meaning whatsoever, unless you have control of a PC and somebody's saying, "I need help. I need decryption." Right.
So
now
let me ask because this could be interesting. As you talk, right? This kind of feels like has the potential to be a type of maybe I call it an arms race. You get into this like you build a better mousetrap, the mouse gets smarter. Is there a way that happens, or is this feels like, because to me this feels like a long-term solution, like they're going to have to completely reinvent what they're doing to get around you?
Okay, so great question. So let's cover a few things in this. First, there's ransomware that's hitting people right now that it was invented 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you look at the production of new ransomware, when you actually get to the encryption core, it is very low. There's only a handful of them out there. I mean, let me back up. There's only a handful of ways to encrypt on commodity hardware, right? The NSA and the CIA and other intelligence agencies with specialized exotics, they do all sorts of crazy stuff. But the stuff that could be executed efficiently at speed on your computer, there's very few techniques. There's standards-based and there's non-standards-based, okay? First question is why anything non-standard is running on your computer would be a big question. We believe in the future we'll be able to block non-standard encryptions from happening, but we don't want to block standards-based encryption because we don't want to interfere with operations for the very whitelisting, blacklisting problem we just talked about. So, number one, let's just start here. Imagine I can go and take every landmine off the field of battle, every existing landmine, and nullify it so it does no damage. So all of the attacks that are happening every day, they're gone. They're now going, you're right, it's an arms race. They're going to have to develop something new. Now, 99% of their innovation is all around the tactics for entry and lateral control and obfuscation.
Yeah.
It's not, they're all the same when they come down to encrypt files. There's only so many ways you can do it. So they're going to have to invent one of two things. Figure out how to mess with us, A, or B, figure out how to come up with a new form of encryption. So like I said, we will be able to detect non-standard encryption, because underneath data transformation is data transformation, and that's part of what we detect. I can't go into a lot of it because A, it's a little over my skis, but also that's our core IP, right? That's what our patents are about. Okay. Now,
all right.
The second, but there's one last part that, let me just hit
Yeah.
this. So they'll come after us. Well, let's be clear. They're going to have to write new versions to come after us. So everything existing to date will be gone, right? That's the goal, right? So it's sort of like, and again, I think it's a bad, but it's a useful so everybody understands. It's like, imagine every variant of a flu up to date is gone. Now you're asking me about something that's never been seen before. Will I fix you for that? We believe so. I can't make the claim that says definitively. We do believe we will be able to achieve solving for every known active uncracked variant to date. Then the last part is, how do you make sure you protect your process? Well, how does CrowdStrike protect theirs? It's very simple. You run as protected kernel processes or required processes in an OS. And that's the wonderful part of our business, is we have OEMs that happen to be in the security space of our technologies that are very happy to share with how to make this protected, because it's so important. So I know we thought through that part at least a little bit.
Yeah, that's cool, because I mean that makes it's kind of like when like, you know, Google Pay, Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, all those things happened. You know, the next thing people thought was, well, hold on, they're going to centralize all that, so then they're going to go after the attackers are going to go after. They're going to shift focus from the individual to the central point. But if you're putting the keys into a write only read kind of space, then yeah, that architecturally that makes a ton of sense. All right, I've heard of the company name before. You and I talked about it. It sounds like a soft drink. Nubeva. It sounds like what? Tell me what else you guys do, because I'm going to come back to this, but tell me what else you guys do.
Well, it's actually good that you pronounced it right, because we've had people call it Nubeva, Nubever, and all sorts of things. We've got a bunch of Canadian investors.
Oh, I've heard you say it. So
you're the new beaver and things like that. Yeah. So I joined the company shortly after it started. The CEO of the company actually is the son of a Chinese diplomat who grew up in Central America. So his primary language is His primary language is Spanish, Central America.
Okay.
So Nubeva is Nubeva, Cloud Go. So the company was intended, when it was founded, we didn't know exactly what we were going to build, but the company was really a cloud innovation company, right? And I'll just tell you, so we are headquartered in San Jose. Our legal headquarters is actually in Canada, but our operating headquarters is in the U.S. We have operations, and our CTO is actually out of Sydney. We are, let's see, I'll cover the progression of how we got to where we are. So we actually started out building, we had some large customers from prior lives who asked us to build a packet broker for the cloud. So in other words, hey, I'm moving my data center into the cloud. How am I going to inspect and monitor my traffic from a security perspective? They were looking at things that were, coming out from the traditional old school packet brokers, and they were just trying to lift and shift data center architectures, which was nonsense. So we said, well, how do you build a cloud native architecture for inspection, right? Born out of microservices and things like that, right? So we started there, and then promptly Amazon and Microsoft announced traffic mirroring and kind of killed that idea. And so those same customers said, well, they solved that, but we still have to worry about encryption. And we started looking at the onslaught of TLS 1.3. And if you think about, which basically obsoletes passive inspection, and that means the only way you can do deep packet inspection is inline. And then you make the next progression in cloud architectures. Nobody is going to put inline devices in between every container and every microservice, right?
Yeah, so that's not a thing anymore.
Your ability to do deep packet inspection shrinks, and so we started to invent a new form of decryption tech, TLS decryption. And the basic idea was, look, you want the integrity of the purpose of TLS is application to application encryption and integrity and privacy. And if the only answer is breaking that by putting some system in the middle that spoofs it, it ultimately is a problem. So
yeah,
the
you've
other
done
answer,
it wrong.
the other answer was, what if we just had a microservice that sat at one of the two ends of the connection, and it could legally, because you have to place it there, it's not malware, could sniff and extract a copy of each session's keys and then safely transport that to an inspection system, whether it be an inline or whether it be a passive system. And we built that technology and brought that to market about 3 years ago. Initially launched it and then started licensing it a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago. And now it's licensed by some very large people in the cybersecurity industry. And they're starting to bring out product with us inside as we speak, because think of high-end IPSs and next-gen firewalls or web gateways that can't see into PIN certificates. They can't inspect any traffic going out to Google or Microsoft, where all your content production is going. Think of all that stuff, and then think of all the passive, IDSs and behavioral monitoring systems in the world. All they can look at is flows. And malware now, 90% of it's all hiding inside encrypted traffic. So how are you going to find it?
Yeah, that's been like, I feel like we've been driving towards that, because as we started talking about encrypt everything, James, you're living in the web world. I'm sure you're loving this, but everything became everything became HTTPS. Everything's encrypted. Every traffic's encrypted between every device on the network, every application, every microservice, every API. It's all encrypted. And our old school approach of trying to do IDS on it, IPS on it, traffic monitoring, just sort of went poof, right? It's gone. And I was never a huge fan of. I mean, there's plenty of these devices that were out there. Put it in line, it'll break and re-encrypt on the fly. You're like, this just feels wrong. Like NSA level's wrong. I mean, it just you're breaking fundamentally the thing that you're trying to accomplish. It just doesn't feel right. Yeah, you've been quiet, James.
Raph, we drop encryption at the load balancer. What are you talking about?
Right.
I mean, this has always been the thing, though, right? I mean, we always argue. I mean, when I'm teaching secure development classes, you talk about like, oh, you want to have secure communication, and then you get to that part that's in the network, and you're like, we should be encrypting this, but good luck. You really have no control over that, and you're probably going to get a lot of pushback from the network team because they want to see everything that's happening inside the network.
And there's the remnant of, well, you need an SSL offload device. It's like, what are you talking about? The endpoint machine can actually generate sessions now. It's all so fast. It's so efficient to run directly on the machine. Hell, your phone's doing it. Our computers are doing it right now. I mean, but the industry is programmed that that's how you architect applications, right? Yeah. But end of the day, you break the end-to-end integrity, and now, and that really starts to fail in the inside cloud, because if you think about it, I terminate the session on a front box, and now am I going to pay the tax to re-encrypt it, or am I going to let clear text run across a shared backbone, right, as it to get it to the ultimate destination of the server or the server cluster, right, server node.
Yeah.
So
well, and that was even, Steve, that was even remotely like. You wouldn't get laughed out of the room if you did that while you were doing something within a kind of a secure enclave type of network architecture in a data center or whatever, right? But when you're talking, and on Amazon's network, that isn't realistic. Like, oh, we're just gonna let clear text go between these 5 cloud instances. Not a problem. Like, yeah, that's not a thing.
Right.
So
let me bridge you back to bring us back to decryption from this, because it'll complete the journey. Okay, so we basically said, hey, in solving TLS, well, there's all this nonsense about the handshake, but none of that matters if you're trying to inspect. What really is, you trying to get in the middle of handshakes is nothing but a strategy to get to the key for the bulk encryption and decryption, right? Because ultimately, once it's encrypted, you got to have the key to look at the data, right? So we said, well, the other place, where else is that key? Well, you already spent the tax to generate it on both endpoints. They go through a handshake, they land on the session key. What if we could just intercept copies of the session key? You do it today with environment variables and debug mode for diagnostics on a machine in certain circumstances. We built a technology that transparently and reliably does it at warp speed. Like we're talking we can get a key in under 200 microseconds, not milliseconds, microseconds. We can get the key out onto the wire before the first packet is encrypted. Okay, roll that forward.
Wow.
Same thing with, here's how encryption works in ransomware. They take, so this is important, I need to take you down a little rabbit hole of encryption. There's lots of types of encryption. Sorry, I had to throw that in.
That's nice of you.
Okay. The way ransomware works is they use symmetric encryption on the files and asymmetric on the keys. So let me explain that. They go to encrypt your files. They identify the files that they want. Then they they generate keys for the files, and then they encrypt them symmetrically. Now, what does that mean? For those who don't know, probably a bunch out there know this very well, but in case some don't, means that the same key that is used to encrypt can be used to decrypt.
Right.
Okay. In RSA type encryption, which is asymmetric, the public key is used to encrypt, and the private key is used to decrypt.
Decrypt. Yeah.
Okay. So here's what they do. Symmetric, by the way, this is the same way TLS works. Handshake, asymmetric, very heavy process, very compute intensive, 100 to 1,000 times slower than symmetric. So we use symmetric for bulk. We use asymmetric for really critical things. Okay. So apply that to file encryption. You use symmetric encryption for encrypting the files, and then you actually asymmetrically encrypt the keys afterwards. So let me explain that again. Identify the files, create some keys, symmetrically encrypt them. Now I got these keys sitting around, and the ransomware guys in the old days, they would export those. They would send them off and destroy them. And then you'd be, hey, pay me my money, give me my keys back. Well, now they got more insidious. They apply an RSA asymmetric encryption against those keys, and there ain't no way to get them back unless you buy the private key. So that's what's happening. You're buying the private key from them, the big key block, which comes down so that you can unlock the file keys asymmetrically and then use symmetric decryption using those keys on the files. So if you think about that, we just steal the original symmetric keys that they used to encrypt the files, put them over here on the sideline.
The rest is who cares?
They do their whole nonsense, and who cares? It's like, have a ball. You could do triple asymmetric. We don't care, because we cut it off at its knees at the very base point. And as a result, you can actually recover the files as fast as they were encrypted. And this is an important point. We'll get there in a second if you want to talk about that. But yeah, but does that make sense as far as what we're doing? A little bit more?
Yeah. So before we run out of time, because I suspect this could be a multi-part episode, because you and I could rant about things forever. But I want to know, because this is let's face it, this is a badass piece of tech. I mean, congratulations. This is kind of awesome. So I'm looking at this going, all right, you could license this into all the 17,000 EDR platforms, MDR tools, whatever. You could give it away for free. You could do a million other things. What's the plan for this?
Okay. Okay. So there's a lot, and it's actually a little bit fluid where it's coming together now. It's sort of my CTO came out of, it's sort of like Watson coming out of his lab and saying, "I've got the light bulb." It's like, and now I'm marketing. I'm in charge of marketing and go to market, and it's like, okay, what the heck am I going to do with this? So there is some fluidity to it, but we do believe, we've talked to some folks in the cyber insurance business, they believe this is game changing. The type of thing that if it does what we think it can do, that they're talking about better rates and higher coverage, et cetera, if we're in place. But they also believe that if we're going to do that, we have to offer it direct to market. At the same time, I believe that this is so important a technology that if it can do it, we are open to licensing it to every endpoint technology on the planet, every MDR, every EDR company. It doesn't matter. It's got to get out there. Honestly, if we take, as our company's mission has quickly shifted to, let's eradicate ransomware as we know it today. Yeah. And if we do that, we'll make money. I'm not concerned as much, obviously I'm concerned about that, but I'm not concerned about optimizing that as much as getting it out there fast, right? So and as fast as possible to really clamp down on this. So we've begun discussions with some OEMs. Quite frankly, there's a whole bunch of EDR and endpoint companies that believe their own marketing that says, "Oh, if you buy us, you won't have a problem." Right? I mean, that is the mantra. You buy us, you won't have a problem. But let me just cover that for a second. And it's not. I think every company needs an EDR. But the mantra for the whole detection and response industry is the 1-10-60 rule. Have you heard this? Just Google it. It's like the whole world. Detect within 1 minute, fully understand in 10 minutes, contain or deal with in 60 minutes. Well, if you look at ransomware and how fast it encrypts, by the time you detect, 20 gig is already encrypted. By the time you fully understand, 250 gig is already encrypted. And by the time that 60 minutes comes along, a terabyte and a half is actually encrypted. So, and that's on a single event. Over. And assuming that you detect it in a minute, right? Because the stuff's getting better. So you got to have an EDR, in my mind. I think is a very important technology. EDR, MDR, XDR, whatever you want to call it, right? But there's a gap there, which is what happens when something does get through and you get hit. The other answer is, anyway, so the problem is I'm trying to engage with those folks. It's early, but we haven't had a lot of deep conversations with them yet. There's a couple though that are very interested, which is very exciting because they're saying, yeah, I'll just add you into my existing agent and voila, instant distribution and problem solved. That would be the ideal piece, and I'll get my little share. We are looking though at bringing this out though for end users too. And we're looking that probably that our channel of distribution will be the Amazon and Azure and Google marketplaces. You don't need to go through a reseller thing. Since you need a cloud database to store the keys anyway, just buy it there. And then the last part is that we're thinking of just pricing it cheap, so it's a no-brainer. It's like a few bucks a month or a couple bucks a month per agent, and you're just like, of course. So
listen, I think ultimately, hey, Microsoft and Apple, are you listening? Build that into the OS itself, right? Or build that as an add-on into the OS, and then I look Windows Defender for endpoint, Mac something. I'm sure you can do it on Linux as well. Getting that piece done. By the way, I forgot to ask this. I probably should have. Is this like a Windows, Mac, Linux? Is it dependent on the OS?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Very much so. Because the memory hooking mechanisms and the ways to hide and be protected in memory are different for OS.
Okay.
Here's our release plan. Initially, it's all Windows 10, Windows Server, including Windows 11 and Windows 2022. 99% of all the attacks are there. The next one, believe it or not, is actually Linux, so you can fully secure a data center, right? And all the critical infrastructure. Then we'll turn to look at OS X and Android and other various mobile platforms. The viability of the technology is the same. The issue with the mobile, just so you know, is we would need an admission from and a working relationship with the mobile operator or the mobile phone creators and OS who don't like giving up a lot of secrets for how to access memory in their devices, right? Rightly so.
Fair enough.
It would need to be a partnership with the OS manufacturers because nobody wants to run an MDM mode, right?
Right. That's pretty good. Hey, I can imagine. Look, there's been a lot of attempts to when people researchers recover keys and this stuff from some of these ransomware gangs. They publish them and give them away for free. How about have you guys given any thought to some of the sucker end user that gets hit? People like me or James over there. Not that security people would ever fall for any of these things. Not-for-profits, hospitals. Boy, I know there's a hospital, James, down your way that about a month and a half ago or 2 months ago could have really used this tech as they were turning people away, right?
Yeah. I mean, definitely an issue that I think a lot of places would be beneficial to get this. I just wonder, like, how hard will it be for somebody else? Like, once this is actually out there and people can start looking at how it's working and understand how it's working, how long until somebody's able to do this same thing, but for the wrong reasons? Like, what's it take to get this type of technology on my system? Do they start repackaging and saying, oh, we're going to just start doing this and we'll just start the decryption and doing our own thing with that?
Yeah, that's another one too. All right, hey, Steve, I'm gonna leave this with you because we are definitely slightly over the line on time. Like I said, we probably keep going, but all right. What do we want to besides? Was it Nubeva cloudgo.com?
Nubeva.com. Upper in the
There's
upper
a
right hand
big red
corner.
button. Yeah.
There's a big red button. So look, the website's all about our TLS product. This is a pre-release like disclosure about a coming product. As I told you, we think it's going to be out in a quarter. Push that red button, go to a page. You'll see some demos of it in action, some videos of it working on live ransomware, and a little bit about the project.
Those are cool.
Yeah, you see it. It's just like encrypt, you're owned. Run the utility, and you're not owned.
That's awesome.
Sign up if you want to stay abreast. Let us know what your interest is. Are you interested in just the tech and staying informed? Or are you interested in becoming a partner? Are you interested in becoming an early access customer? We're going to have a webinar about this where we'll take some open-ended questions and things like that. You'll get information. If you sign up there, you'll get an invite to that. But the other request would be is if you like what you're hearing, help us make this better. Like participate. If we can solve this, it's huge for everybody. And I'm getting old, so I kind of want to do good things for the world as well as make money. And I think this is just one of those rare chances to do well and do good, right? And spread the word. I'm trying to figure out, to your question about nonprofits and things, I'm trying to figure out how to get into the government and the White House, who's like going after cybercrime. And this is the type of thing that every city and every school district and every nonprofit, as well as critical infrastructure needs. A small company like Nubeva piercing the shield of the government bureaucracy to be heard is hard. So
there's some people that there's some people that listen to the show. Hey, Mr. Krebs says he listens. So Brian, if you're listening, this might be something interesting for you to go check out. But look, there's a ton of people that I get that listen to the show that are in the that work for vendors, that are research analysts, that are architects and engineers of products. I'd invite those folks to go investigate this on your own. Don't take my word for it. It's always good to validate some of these claims yourself. Go watch the video. Do you guys have a way of that people can kind of test this agent on their own right now?
Not yet, but that we will be putting that out and allowing people to, giving instructions for how to create a clean room, how to put us into it, how to set up a test environment, et cetera, et cetera. Again, get on that list and let us know if that's something you're of interest to, just by signing up, and then we'll be able to communicate to you when that's available.
I can imagine the MDR companies at this point are thinking, well, hell, how do I get this? And so nobody else does, make it competitive. But that's going to be up to you guys. All right. Woo, Mr. Steve Perkins, that was a blast, man. I'm glad we took the time because I think people need to hear it. We're happy to use the podcast platform. James, what do you think? Have we nuked it? Is this the winning death blow to ransomware? Oh, please God, let it be.
I don't know, but if it is, I feel like this should have been 500. It's something big for episode 500, and I don't know, we're a little early if this is going to kill it, but it sounds pretty promising. It's very interesting technology to hear about. It's funny, I was thinking, we do all this like, oh man, do all this, Windows is 99% of it. Or we could just switch everybody to Macs. Like,
No.
I do want to therefore kind of where you started at the beginning of this back, Raph. Thanks, Raph and James, to having me on. I think until it's out, all I can say is this shows extreme promise. And look, where everybody jumps to the, can you solve it all, and will you be able to solve anything in the future? And the answer is, we think so. But look, even if we did 99% of what's out there now, it's a huge win. And again, that's just a question of price, right? Because if I come to you with something that's so cheap and I give you a money back guarantee, if you get popped and I can't help you recover, why wouldn't you buy it? Why wouldn't you try?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we've got to prove it and make things work. So that's kind of what we're thinking. And like I said, we'll start with business and then move to the consumer. The volume and the scale of support and things like support infrastructure for consumers quite a bit different. So maybe we get to consumer through MDRs and maybe some integrators and some partners instead. because by the time they build the scale out to do that, it'll be too late.
Yeah. So as a parting thought, folks, that we've been talking for years in this industry about the way to solve any particular epidemic of badness is to make it financially infeasible or turn the ROI model upside down. Right. One piece of ransomware can make millions, potentially tens of millions, and if this thing works, you wipe out all that work they've done up until this point, and you force them to go start again. I tell you what, I'm excited for that. Let's go wipe out all that hard work the bad guys have been doing. Maybe we make life a little bit easier. And I'm all for screwing their lives up. Like, you know what? Screw those guys. All right. Mr. Steve Perkins, once again, thanks for being on the show. Nubeva.com, folks. Upper right-hand corner, go click that red button. I did. Go check out the videos. They're damn compelling. And for James and myself and the folks over at Nubeva, thanks for being on the show. Thanks for sharing some early stuff with us. We're going to post this forthwith. And Steve, maybe for 500, you come back. That's what, 30 some odd episodes away, 30 weeks away. Come back and tell us how that new island is going once you've solved ransomware. Thanks for being on the show, buddy.
Thanks so much.
And thanks for listening, folks. This has been episode 469 of the Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. This is Raph signing off. We'll catch you guys another time, another place on yet another Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. Ciao, y'all.